Welcome to the Retirement Planner Podcast, the podcast that brings clear guidance to help American families like you to navigate the journey from savings to spending in retirement. I'm your host, Don Chamberlin, a certified financial educator, and my mission for over 2 decades has been to educate and help Americans throughout our great country about their retirement planning goals. With each episode, we will tackle subjects such as Social Security, taxes, market protection, everything else you need to know to retire with peace of mind. No financial jargon, just straightforward education and real-world wisdom to help you build the retirement you've worked so hard to achieve. Join me as we explore how to help you make your money work as hard as you have. We're back with the Retirement Planner Podcast. Plan before retiring, plan before paying taxes. This is our second podcast with Jason L. Smith, the founder of C2P Enterprises, also the JL Smith Group, which I know you've expanded throughout the country now, Jason. You have several offices. Maybe we can talk about the locations that you have around the country as well. And of course, he is the author of the widely known retirement planning book that is called The Bucket Plan. And that's what we're going to talk about today. And I don't know if you know, but we send the Bucket Plan book out to every one of the people that are part of any of our events. We do classes at local libraries. We do classes online. And as part of our online class, we say, if you want a Bucket Plan book, we'll mail it to you. And we'll send it out to them. We're really committed to educating people on retirement. So if you're watching this podcast and you want to contact us either by phone or email and you want a Bucket Plan book, we'll mail it directly to you so that you can study the Bucket Plan a little bit more. So let's talk about this concept of the Bucket Plan. I know we left off with sequence of returns risk, and that's a kind of a major issue for a lot of people. That's a kind of a hidden factor because they don't really know what it is. Right. And maybe you can hit on that again, Jason, with why sequence of returns risk is so important and how it led you to come up with this concept of the Bucket Plan.
Sure, Don. And yeah, just to go back to your statement a minute ago, I'm in my cold Cleveland office, wishing I was in my warm Florida office.
Right. But, so don't you have an office in Washington State and Atlanta too now? I mean, you're really expanding and helping a lot of people.
Yeah, I'm in Minneapolis. We're really passionate, just like you are, Don, about getting holistic wealth management, which the Bucket Plan is a holistic wealth management process, right? And so we want to get that out to as many American families as we can. And we're passionate about it, just like you are. And that's what we have that kinship, that brothership in common. I think, Don, what might be helpful to just the listeners is to hear just how the Bucket Plan got started, and then we can go kind of circle back.
Yeah, I'd love to hear the backstory. That would be awesome.
Yeah, the sequence of returns risk and how we solve for that with the Bucket Plan philosophy of the time segmentation of money into 3 buckets. But going back to the beginning, it was a client that had joined me, husband and wife, and the Bucket Plan is a true story. And so you'll read the story. The names were changed and some of the details, but it's a true story, literally down to the conversations that were had. And it was a couple that came to me, and he handled all of the affairs, right? And ultimately, like, his wife was completely hands off and really had no clue what was going on. I mean, because he handled everything. And so he came in to see me initially himself. And I said, nope, in the book it says Jerry. His name was actually John. But anyway, I said, Jerry, we don't do it that way. Like, it's too important for, if anything ever happens to you, we got to make sure that Irene is going to be taken care of and she understands what's going on. And so, this is as much education as it is anything else. So he agreed, and we went through the process. And, we did everything that you and I have talked about, Don, like even in our previous podcast, the Social Security analysis and figuring out their tax situation, getting their estate planning in place. They even bought a long-term care policy with a return of premium rider, which they ended up not needing the long-term care and had all the money refunded. Life insurance policy to pay off the mortgage. I mean, we had all the estate planning, the tax, the financial, the legal, the insurance, the Social Security, all of it accounted for, built a holistic wealth management plan throughout the bucket plan process. Now, unfortunately, John, died suddenly not long after. And it was completely unforeseen. At least we did get the planning in place, though. And I'll never forget the day and how I was inspired to write the bucket plan book is she came in, Irene came in, and similar to you, Don, we like to kind of visually draw things out. And so we had it drawn out on the dry erase board. I had the 3 buckets, and I went through and I showed her each one of the accounts and how much she had in each bucket and how, the mortgage would be paid off. And then we were able to put an annuity in place that would replace the income and create a lifetime of income for her. She would never have to worry about running out of money, and gave her complete peace of mind, just drawing all that out over a 15-20 minute period, reminding her of all the planning that we had did just a year or so before. And she looked down at the desk, and this was just maybe a week after the funeral. Of course, I attended the funeral, and it was fresh, but she looked down at the desk for what felt like an eternity, but was probably maybe 5 to 7 seconds. And she looked up. She had tears coming down her eyes, and she said, "I'm going to be okay, aren't I, Jason?" And I have chills just remembering that, and she stood up and she came around the table and she gave me this hug like I'd never felt before. And it was emotional. And as soon as she left, I was like, I have to tell this story. I have to, and I decided to write it in the book, and I recounted, the entire process of what we did, and told that story, but gave the details of all the planning that we did. And as you know, Don, it's really become quite popular, and there's been a lot, it's spread, and I think it's relatable because it's a lot of people's similar situation.
It's real life. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly.
Yeah.
So good. So from that experience, what kind of happened next in the evolution of the bucket plan?
Yeah, I mean, as you know, Don, I mean, we went on from the book, we created it to an educational class. It's in the American College even for financial services, which is kind of the place that financial advisors go for education on getting designations and everything like that. And we created, a certification where you become bucket plan certified, and CFPs and CPAs. And
well, all of our holistic planners here at our firm have that certification. Yep.
Yep. And so we went on to, just really try to get the bucket plan, this holistic wealth management process out to as many advisors as we could to help as many American families, because we are so passionate that this is the way that you need to operate. Too often that people work in silos. You talk to the investment guy, and then he conflicts with what your insurance guy says, that says you should buy this annuity or life insurance or long-term care, who sometimes conflicts with the CPA who says you shouldn't do that, you should do this, and then who conflicts with the attorney. and they're all
Him,
siloed.
talk to the other
Yeah.
guy. Right.
Exactly. And they conflict each other sometimes, but bringing it all together into one. And listen, ultra high net worth people have gotten this service forever, right? It's a family office. And so what we're doing though is we're bringing that family office type of experience down to hardworking American families that have accumulated a good amount of assets, and they need to protect and they need to grow that money to take care of them and their family throughout their lifetime. And that's what the essence of holistic wealth management is. But they got to avoid the biggest mistake, the thing that we talked about in the last podcast.
Yep. And that's sequence of returns risk. So the idea with that is if you're going along and all of a sudden you retire and then you have a 2000 or a 2008 where the stock market goes down substantially and you're having to you've never had to pull money out of your accounts before. You've always put in when the market's going down, you've always put in, and that's kind of helped you rebound a little bit because you're buying at a lower point, and when it goes up, that's helpful. And that's called dollar cost averaging, obviously. But in this case, you're kind of doing the opposite of dollar cost averaging, and you're taking money out while the market's going down, and you're likely to never recoup that money that you took out, and it's not going to be there to help you rebound. So there's only so much of that you can do. And if there's too much of it at the beginning of your retirement, you might not have enough money at the end to sustain your lifestyle. So maybe you can explain a little bit about how the bucket plan overcomes this issue.
Absolutely. And, just going back to kind of what we talked about before is, the money cycle: accumulation, preservation, distribution. And we all go through it. The mistake that people make is they go from accumulation into distribution. They never preserve a portion of the assets that they're going to draw from that first phase of retirement. And that is what subjects them to sequence of returns risk. And so sequence of returns risk can't and does not happen in the accumulation phase. Sequence of returns risk only happens in the distribution phase if you have not preserved a portion of your assets that you're going to draw from throughout that first period of time in retirement. And so the methodology is to split your money up into three buckets, right? A now bucket, which is your safe and liquid money. It's the money that, it's your emergency fund or your comfort fund, or the money that you have some planned expenses coming up and, in the near future, in the next year or two. You don't want to invest that money. You don't want to tie it up. You don't want to subject it to risk. You want it safe and liquid in the now bucket, right? That's your now bucket. And some people, listen, I see people, and you do too, Don, they come in and they have way too much money in their now bucket, and they're sacrificing the rate of return they could be earning on that money if they invested it in the sooner or the later. And then you get other people who don't have enough, and they're nervous, and they don't have an emergency fund, and they don't have planned expenses set aside because too much of their money is invested in the soon and later bucket. So getting that now bucket is super important so you can put your head on the pillow at night.
Yeah, I remember I was a broker back in the 80s and 90s, so I don't know that everyone's doing this now anymore, but it used to be the market's doing so much better than these safer assets for your emergency fund. Why wouldn't you put as much in the market as you possibly can? So I think there's a tendency to kind of do that the longer the market goes up, and we haven't seen a real steady downturn in the market since 2009. So it's kind of like at some point something's going to happen. I don't know when it's going to happen. That's what I always mention to clients is I have no idea the next time the market's going to go down steadily and have this sequence of returns. We just know it's likely to happen sometime. So that's why we do the bucket, because people still ask us, what's the market going to do this year? And I always say, I have no idea. But I know if you have a bucket plan, you'll be prepared for if it goes up or if it goes down. Because not only
Yeah.
will you have your emergency fund, but you'll have your soon bucket for your income and you'll have your later bucket for your growth. So maybe you can talk a little bit more about how the soon bucket and the later bucket go along with your now bucket.
Yeah, yeah, and Don, I think that some people ask me too about the market, and I always say, you know what, I left my crystal ball in the car. Can I go out there and do
Right, right, right.
it? Yeah. So the soon bucket is really that preservation portion of the assets, right? In the simplest terms, that's what it is. The soon bucket, especially for somebody who's about to retire, right? But even if you have a younger entrepreneur or business owner, that soon bucket can be more of an opportunity bucket. It's the money that you want to invest more conservatively that you can confidently withdraw income or withdrawals from that money without being subjected to the full downturn or swings in the market. So, the now bucket, completely safe and liquid. The soon bucket, you want to earn enough money to outpace inflation, but you're not in full growth mode like you are in the later bucket. In the soon bucket, you want to earn a favorable rate of return. You're willing to make that commitment with a portion of your assets, but it has to be money that you're more geared towards preserving it because you're going to be drawing heavily for income or withdrawals in retirement. So invested very differently than the now bucket, but then ultimately the third bucket, the later bucket, is invested very differently from the soon bucket because that is the money that you can go into full growth mode because you have the confidence and you've bought a time horizon between the now and the soon bucket that the rest of that money can be focused on growth. And so that way you're willing to take on the ups and the downs and the swings in the market in the later bucket because you have a time horizon. You're going to make that money back if there's a downturn in the market.
So the soon bucket is really where what happens is we figure out your income, right? And we talked in the last episode about this income gap analysis. So we're figuring out your expenses, we're subtracting out Social Security and pension if you have that, and we're getting down to what your income gap is. What we generally put in there is 10 years worth of income to cover the first 10 years of your retirement. So that's the preservation part of what we're talking about here is keep that money safe, take it off the table. The market's going to go down, that money shouldn't go down then. So maybe you can explain why 10 years, how we came up with that number and why it's important.
Yeah, I mean, typically, if you look historically, if you buy yourself a 10-year time horizon, you're going to be able to weather the storm of any downturn in the market. It's typically even a shorter period than that. But, there is the lost decade, right? And, and which was a time period from 10 years later, the market was down or flat, right? And so the key is we want to invest it conservatively where we're going to earn some money, right? And it's going to grow, but we don't want to subject it to the downturns in the market. And by having a 10-year time horizon, it buys us the appropriate amount of time to know that we can weather that storm. And Don, as you know, there are some conservative clients that say, you know what? My parents had a pension. I always kind of I would like to have a certain amount of my money guaranteed, like of a certain amount of income guaranteed. And so in that case, maybe it isn't just a 10-year time horizon. They might want income for the rest of their life. And so, it just depends on each individual person and their goals and their comfort level for risk. Somebody who's a little bit more comfortable with risk is going to only cover a certain period of time in the soon bucket because they want more capital invested in the later bucket towards growth. Somebody more conservative might want a larger portion of their assets to put into the soon bucket to guarantee a period of income even for the rest of their life. And guarantees, of course, are based on where you're investing the money. I mean, really, there's only three ways you can guarantee money. I mean, one way is you can guarantee it through the bank, through the FDIC, by building some type of CD ladder, typically. The other way would be government bonds, right? You could build a government bond ladder. And the third way that you can guarantee the money is through an insurance company like pensions do. And so, the question really is going to be is like, how much of that money or your income do you want guaranteed? And for what period of time do you want it guaranteed for? But we typically like to shoot for at least 10 years.
So then once you set that income aside for 10 years in the soon bucket, you've got, usually it's the majority of the money in the later bucket, and that's set up for growth. So we're talking about investing it here. There's risk involved in investing. How do you figure that out so it's maybe the right portfolio for the client and gauge their risk level? How do you do that?
Well, Don, it's interesting you asked that question, and what makes me think of is, a conversation, or really it was a presentation from a gentleman that I saw, many years ago, and he talked about the difference of risk and volatility, right? And there is a difference. A lot of people don't realize or understand the difference of risk and volatility. And what he talked about was like risk is like where you have the risk of losing the entire investment, right? Volatility, like if you bought an individual stock and that company goes out of business, your investment goes to zero, right? Like that's risk, and that is the way he described it. Where volatility is more where you're in a mutual fund, right? Or you're in a diversified portfolio. You're going to experience volatility. It's going to go up and down with the market, but I don't know that it's really the definition of risk, because the chance of your money going to zero when you own hundreds, if not thousands, of individual companies within a diversified portfolio of mutual funds and exchange traded funds or whatever you're invested in, it's more about volatility. And so, when we have a tool, Don, as you know, you use it. It's called the volatility tolerance analysis, which is what we do is we score the soon bucket and the money that will be invested there, and come up with a score to give us kind of a guide of how much risk you're willing or comfortable taking, or how much volatility, see, I even caught myself, that you're willing to take on in the soon bucket versus how much volatility that you're willing to take on in the later bucket. And so we score the later bucket separately from the soon bucket. Never seen anybody else do this before, but it coincides perfectly of why we do it is with this time segmenting your money based on the purpose and the time horizon of when you'll need to access those funds. Why in the world would you invest your soon bucket money like you would invest your later bucket money? It's two totally different purpose and goals and time horizon of when you'll need to access those funds.
Only if you're still trying to accumulate, right? If you're the advisor who's focused on accumulation rather than preservation and distribution, would that end up happening? And I thought that this concept of the volatility tolerance analysis was really cool because being in the investment industry for, oh my gosh, I think it's 40 years now, I had done some of these, what they call risk profiles for clients in the past. And the only thing that they're really focusing on is what are the investments? What's the risk in the investments? They never talk about where you're getting income or more conservative investments. It's all about an entire portfolio that's designed to grow over time. What does that sound like? Sounds like accumulation. So that's where we have a lot of great advisors out there today that are really focused on accumulation, and they're great at that. But what we're seeing from the classes we do and the people that come out of our classes is they say there's really no one that's showing us what to do once we get to when we need to preserve it and then distribute as an income in retirement. So that's what you've done, Jason, with the holistic plan, the holistic philosophy, and the bucket plan. So we thank you very much for your contribution to the whole industry and to Americans being able to retire This has been a phenomenal session. I really appreciate you taking the time to talk with us today. And I'm sure, in the future, we may have other chances to talk. And we're actually going to be at a financial conference next week together. So I'll look forward to seeing you there. In the meantime, if you liked the conversation here today on the Retirement Planner podcast, let us know and subscribe to our podcast, subscribe to our several social media channels. And you can always look us up at chamberlin-group.com. We're happy to have you join us. And as part of what we're doing, we will actually give what we call a no-fee mini retirement plan. This includes a lot of what Jason's been talking about today, and includes a Social Security analysis report. It includes the volatility tolerance analysis that he mentioned, and it includes a current bucket plan showing you where your assets are currently. This is what we do for people who join our podcasts or any of our other classes to continue their education. So what you would do to do that would be go to our website, click on the button that says schedule a call. You'll talk to one of our retirement educators, and they'll answer some of your questions and point you in the right directions, get you lined up for a formal Zoom meeting with one of our holistic planners, and then we'll be able to do that mini plan for you. So hopefully this has been helpful to everyone. We're very grateful for you joining us today, and we'll look forward to seeing you very soon. Take care. Thank you so much for watching the podcast today. Our mission is to bring an education-first approach to help countless families like you turn their retirement dreams into reality. Have specific questions about today's podcast? Do you want to learn more about our holistic planning approach? Click the button below to schedule a call with one of our financial educators. Subscribe to our podcast and share with others who could benefit from this episode. Check out our YouTube channel for more videos on this retirement planning subject. Also, follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn for all your retirement planning needs. Remember, planning for retirement is a journey, not a sprint. It's about taking those critical steps today to secure your future. Until next time, keep planning, keep dreaming, and keep moving forward on the path to your confident and fulfilling retirement.